What about the whole conversation of going the idea of a record label versus being independent? Is
Yes.
that the same for producers as well?
Well, no, the producers don't usually do that. The producers usually sign something called a publishing deal,
Okay.
where let's say a company will reach out to me and say, okay, we'll give you, let's just say 100,000, right?
Mm,
And for you to get that 100,000, we're gonna get money off your publishing.
gotcha.
So basically, they give you $100,000 loan,
Mm,
and then they get your publishing. Remember the 50%?
yeah.
They get those the money that comes from that until your 100K is paid off,
It's a
and
double.
then they get and some,
Yeah.
right? So you could decide like if you need the money right away,
Mm,
okay, you can take that. But if you're okay, you can say, you know what, I'm good. Like I'll just get money, for my live
mm,
off my own thing. So that's usually on the producer side. On the artist side, they can either sign to. They have really three routes. They could sign to a record label, they could sign to a distribution company, or they can go independent.
yeah.
And so we've kind of had some experience with all three. So obviously, starting out, we were independent, um, and releasing music when you want,
Yeah.
do whatever you want. Basically, you have the reins, right? All the money goes to you.
Mm-hmm.
You're good.
Yep.
It has some pros and it has some cons, right? Some pros is obviously flexibility. You get to make your own decisions, do what you want. You get all the money. But then some cons are you won't have the push, you won't
Mm,
have the support, the direction, marketing,
mm,
all that, right? That the distribution or the label can give you.
sure.
So next would be the distribution, and that they're kind of like in the middle. So a distribution company will come up to you and say, okay, we'll give you $50,000 for you to release an album,
Okay.
right? So with the $50,000, they'll basically fund the marketing, they'll fund all the things I mentioned, right? And then they only have the rights to that album for, let's say, 5 years, like
Mm,
5, 7 years sometimes.
mm,
So then they get all the money until that 50K is recouped and then some, right?
gotcha.
But at least they help out with the marketing and stuff like that.
Mm,
Then they goes the label. The label usually offers way more, right? Probably like 500,000 or a million,
yeah.
depending on how big you are. But the thing is with them, instead of them owning the music for like 5 to 7 years, they own it for life.
A 360 deal. Yeah.
Basically, unless you have like
Mm,
a lot of leverage and you
leverage.
can negotiate, but
Mm,
usually they own it for perpetuity.
mm,
Um, they they still provide those same things like marketing, merch. Like they basically do they
gotcha.
like they run you like a machine, right?
Gotcha.
So, but the thing is that is good in some aspects, right? Because like they're gonna set you up for success,
Yeah.
but at the same time you're losing basically your rights, and that's why
Mm,
people say they're slave to their label because all the money you generate, especially if you sign a 360 deal,
yeah.
will go to the label, like merch,
Mm,
everything for perpetuity. Like
mm,
even things that you seek out yourself, like let's say you get an endorsement deal from Nike, the label's still gonna get paid from that, even
because
though
of
they had
360.
nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
So there's definitely pros and cons, and you just have to figure out what works best for you.
We we had Marcella J on the
Okay.
podcast who was working with Lavish. I believe she's still working with Lavish.
Okay.
This was before the recent
Yeah.
EP drop, and
Yeah.
she mentioned that the music industry is ruthless.
Oh, yes.
And
100%.
have you experienced something like that, or any stories that you can share in terms of how that may be true?
I mean, I haven't necessarily experienced that fully. We did experience a record label deal, kind of. It never fully went through. It was just talks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Earlier on, when we started, Atlantic reached out and we were talking to an A&R from Atlantic Records,
Mm-hmm.
and like it was kind of the same thing. Like he was talking about the 360 perpetuity, and even back then, like we were still super new and young, and but we knew that's not something we wanted. So um, we ended up not going through with it. But yeah, definitely that was probably the only experience I've had. But I've definitely heard a lot of horror stories, especially from producers too, that will place a song and they won't get paid for it for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're just they're trying to hit up the label, no one's answering them. Like, so there's definitely horror stories, but it doesn't happen all the time, but it definitely does happen a lot.
And then it probably sours the rest, right?
Yeah,
One bad apple just sours the rest.
exactly.
So.
It ruins your motivation because
Mm.
like, even if I get the song with this artist, I'm not gonna get paid from it. They're gonna take months and years, and so yeah, that definitely happens.